Welcome. It's great to be with you today. I'm Stephen Rhoades, joined with my colleague Jonathan Meade. We're with Synergy Technical. We are a Microsoft partner and a global provider of IT cloud services and solutions. We're coming to you from Richmond, Virginia today, and we're excited to talk about how to unleash the potential of your data using Microsoft Fabric. Jonathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Steve?
Awesome.
Excellent.
I'm excited to hear about
Yeah,
this.
me too. Me too.
All right. So our agenda for today, we're going to first look at what Microsoft Fabric is and the components that make it up. And then we're going to look at see an end-to-end example of how the data integrates and moves through Fabric. We're going to discuss the analytics scalability and AI features of the platform. And then finally, Jonathan is going to give us a superb demo showing how to import data, transform and orchestrate it with data flows and pipelines, and build advanced data warehouse type structures leveraging Power BI for analytics and visualizations. So what is Fabric? Fabric is a unified software as a service data platform and a suite of tools that are pulled together from across the Microsoft portfolio. It leverages Purview for data governance and controls that follow the data all the way through to the reporting level. Fabric stores lake houses, data warehouses, and other items in one lake, and it includes a whole suite of tools for developing data integrations, transformations, and analysis. It also includes the analytics platforms that consumers are expecting, namely Power BI, to leverage against multiple data sets. So here are the key workloads that we have in Fabric. We're not going to go through all of these today. We're going to really focus on data factory, data warehouse, lakehouse, and reporting in Power BI. So data factory includes over 300 connectors to address your complex ETL requirements. And data warehouse provides the full transactional capabilities of a traditional data warehouse within Fabric. Power BI can be used to create reports and display KPIs wherever that user consumes those reports, whether that's on desktops, phones, or in applications like Teams. We don't show this today, but Fabric also includes some data science features that enable you to build sophisticated AI models within Fabric. So Jonathan, you want to tell us a little bit about why someone would want to use Fabric?
Sure, Stephen. First of all, it's a unified platform. It all comes together. So you got your data engineering, data warehousing, and business intelligence in one platform. So it's basically one-stop shopping for your data analysis and warehousing needs. Since it's part of Microsoft 365, it natively integrates with Power BI, Purview, and all the other kind of Microsoft services that you have. So it's scalable performance. So Fabric has a variety of capacity SKUs, so you can size your workload based off the data you have, and it's effortless to change it up or down. And once you find sort of the right capacity, you can lock in your costs based on an annual basis.
Fantastic.
And it does offer enhanced security, so it does integrate with Purview, so you can use your data sensitivity labels, and you can use Purview to analyze and look at your workloads and what the data is.
Fantastic. All right, so here we have an example of the end-to-end architecture and tools within Fabric. So from the left, we have the data sources that you can import, and you can leverage pipelines and data flows. We'll look at this today. And you can ingest that and transform that data in one lake, the storage layer that contains multiple lake houses. So Jonathan, do you want to walk us through the concept of what we call the medallion architecture that we're seeing here?
Sure. So if you look on the bottom middle there, you can see this bronze, silver, and gold, and that's the medallion architecture. And those are three different layers of data quality. And so each of those could be lake houses. They could be a combination of lake houses and warehouses, all built in the one lake platform. So the bronze layer, that's your raw ingested data. So that would be, if you're querying SQL Server, that would kind of be a copy of the data table. It could be files. So you're getting monthly CSV files from a vendor. You could store them just as is in that bronze layer. When we get to the silver layer, we're going to start transforming and cleaning up that data. So for instance, the going back to those text or CSV files we get from a vendor. In the silver layer, we'd be putting those into a table in the lakehouse and cleaning them up and organizing them. And then finally, the gold layer, this is our final consumable product for our end user. So if here everything is cleansed, we have all the relationships designed between the various tables in our data warehouse, and this is where your users would be consuming this data through doing queries through SQL or through Power BI.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so the key thing to understand about Fabric is that, as we said, it's a unified SaaS platform. So it includes all the tools for different roles in your organization, from the data scientists to the engineers to the analysts, enabling them to collaborate. And you're able to govern and secure that data, as we've mentioned, from the source itself and even down to the row and column level. It ensures that the right data is available to the right business units, and it enables all of the data consumers in the business to leverage the data that they need through the tools and the platform of choice. So familiar tools like you mentioned, importing CSVs or leveraging SQL queries or Power Query, they enable you to do rapid development. You can also connect from multiple data sources. So whether those be files or SQL or Oracle databases, SharePoint data, or, as we mentioned before, numerous third-party APIs and connectors. You want to talk a little bit about the scalability on the platform?
Sure. Yeah. So it can handle Fabric can handle really large volumes of data and workloads efficiently. Again, it will scale and compute the storage resources based off your workload demands, and then you can adjust your capacity as needed if you're based on your workloads. It can handle petabytes of data with lakehouse architecture, and it is optimized for both your structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data, as we talked about in the lakehouse. You can use it with real-time data ingestion and processing, and it does work with the streaming data sets as well. And then finally, you can use Spark, which we won't get in today. That's kind of its own presentation there, and SQL-based parallel processing for faster data handling.
Nice.
So it's great for complex analytical queries.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So finally, you can leverage Copilot within Fabric to help you build the components that we're going to see, such as data flows, pipelines, reports. By building an AI skill, you can leverage the same conversational AI features of Copilot to enable you to basically ask questions of your data, directly on your data. And leveraging SDKs such as LangChain and Semantic Kernel, you can develop your own custom LLMs. We want to note though that it does require the F64 capacity SKU for access to these AI features. All right, so Jonathan, we come to the point where we'd love to see a demo.
Great. Yeah, let's get going.
Let's get into it.
Okay, great. So we are in Power BI, and I've created a Power BI workspace called Fabric Demo. And really the only, if we go to my workspace settings real quick here, you can see that, if I get down to the licensing here, I've connected to Fabric here. So it's a trial license, but which is a great way to, if you want to experiment and test Fabric. They're always offering 30-day trials for Fabric. So that's the workspace setup. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start off. We talked briefly about lakehouses. So that's a container to store your data. It can be structured in table format, or it can be unstructured raw files. So we're gonna go ahead and create a lakehouse. Just search for it. Lakehouse. Just call it LH, and no spaces allowed. And we'll just call it webinar. Create that. So it spins up very quickly here. It should only take a few seconds, and there we go. So there's we're in our lakehouse. So you can see on the left, I have tables and files. So this is where you can have their structured and unstructured data. So for my files here, I'm just going to create a new folder. Just call it sales data. Go. And then here, let's go here. And right here, I can just do upload. So I'm just going to grab a file. And we have a CSV file of sales data, so I'm just going to grab that and upload it. There we go. You can see it's been uploaded. And if we come here and expand this, let's refresh it here. There's your data. If we click on it, we can see a preview. Here's our CSV file with sales order number, sales order line, customer, and so on. So great. So that's how easy it is to get data into OneLake. So if we want to convert this data from CSV, we can just load it to a table. So I'm just going to click on the three dots here and do load to tables and create a new table. And we'll just call it sales data. And we'll tell it it's a CSV file. And this is just saying that we have a column header in our CSV file and a separator. So let's go ahead and load it. And that should just take a moment to load. There we go. So you can see it successfully created a table called sales data. So now let's go up to our tables and let's refresh again here and expand it. And then if I click on sales data, review it up here just so we can see that we got everything loaded. It's taking longer when we're doing a webinar. There we go.
Of course.
So there's our data. Now we have our data in a table, and now we can work with it. So let's say we want to, do some querying on our data. So let's go back to our lakehouse here. Let's go back to workspace here. So here's let's scroll down here to our webinar. So you can see here's our lakehouse, and it's also created SQL Analytics endpoint. And so this is where we can go in and query the data that's in our lakehouse. So you can see now here, I can actually create an SQL query here. So let's say we want to select, first we can just say we want to select everything from, what's our table called? Sales data. There we go. It'll prompt us so we don't have to type everything. So there we go. So we'll just hit run. And that'll just give us the same data set. There we go. There's our query. So if we want to get a little more advanced with our queries, so let's say we want to see total sales by customer. So we're going to select back here. Let's get rid of our asterisk there. So we want to select. So customer name. Let's select customer name, and then so you can see in our data we have quantity and unit price, but we don't have a total. So we're gonna have to do a total. So we're gonna say we want a sum, and we're gonna take the quantity times the unit price. There we go, and let's just give that a name. So let's just call that total sales. All right, so we're getting all that from that, and then since we want to do it by customer, we're going to group our data by customer name. There we go. And finally, we want to see who our best customers are, our largest customers. So let's enter and let's order by then our total sales. Oops. And let's order that in descending order. Let's run our query. There we go. So we got our customers, and then we have our total sales, and we can see who our best customers are.
Very nice.
Yep. And then so this is something we want to reuse, then we can just, instead of calling it query one, we can rename it and just call it our There we go. So great. So if that's with SQL, it's not that complicated. But if you're not comfortable with SQL, you can also do a visual query. So instead of a new SQL query, we're going to hit new visual query. And this is much more kind of drag and drop, and you kind of work your way through the process here. So let's go back and find our table here, sales data. So I'm going to drag and drop that table there. And then up here, you can see it's this is kind of the flow of our process. So we have the source, we pick the database, and now we've picked the table. So if we want to do the same kind of thing where we want to get total sales by customer, first thing we want to do is, again, we're going to pick quantity and unit price because that's what we want to multiply together. And then we're going to add a step here. And there's all sorts of transformation logic you can do here, but we're going to scroll down to, we're going to multiply from the columns we've selected. So hit multiply. There we go. And there we go. It's inserted this multiplication step, and then we can see here, here's our total sales. All right, we don't want to call that multiplication, so I can just double click on it and rename it.
It was great. You don't have to know any actual SQL statements.
Correct. Yeah, this will just kind of walk you through it.
That's fantastic.
Yep. There we go. So we've renamed our column. We got total sales. So now what we want to do is just group by customer like we did. So again, I can just click the plus here to add another step, and we can look for it. I'll just search for it here. Here we go. Group by, and we want to group by customer name. And this is our resulting column, so we're just going to call it total sales. And what we want to do is we want to sum our column called total sales. So hit OK. There we go. We have the same result. And all we need to do to sort by total sales is hit our total sales drop down here. And we will sort descending. There we go. We got the same results. We didn't need to know anything about SQL, and we can now have this visual query, and we can save this as well. Let's rename it visual query. Keep hitting the wrong button on my keyboard here. There we go.
That is really powerful. So if you can bring your SQL chops to this, or obviously, or if you don't, then you can build these kinds of queries.
Yep, and you can bring in multiple tables and join them all together, and you can get very sophisticated without having to know anything about SQL.
Very cool.
All right, so that's one way of ingesting data into our lakehouse or into Fabric. So let's go back here to our workspace, and what we're going to do now is we're going to create a data flow. And the data flow is what we're going to use to sort of automate our process of ingesting data. So I'm going to pick data flow. So there's Gen 1 and Gen 2. You always want to pick Gen 2. Gen 1's older iteration of the data flow. And we'll just call this, we're going to get order data, so we'll just call it sales order data. We'll click create. So data flow, first thing we're going to do is tell it what the data source is. So it's given us a few examples here. If we have another source, we can click here and go to view more. And so you can bring in, you can see we have a lot of options on bringing data in, from simple just Excel workbook on your computer to getting data from SharePoint, Oracle, MySQL, Azure SQL Server, and then a whole variety of third-party connections, as well as APIs that you can certainly leverage from third parties as well. We're just going to do a text CSV file, and right here, so I have a path from some Microsoft sample data here, so let's copy that and just paste it here. And so it's giving me a preview of the data. You can see it's just sales order data here. So let's go ahead and create it. All right, so now we're in the data flow. You can see it kind of does this. It's very similar to our visual query in that it's giving us sort of step by step what it's going through. So we got our data, it's formatted, it's changed the data types accordingly. So let's go ahead and let's add a column. So we can hit the plus here, or we can hit just add column up here. And we're going to do a custom column. And let's say for our data, we want to have a column for the year of the order. Let's just call this order year. And then here we put our formula. If you don't know the formula, you can hit this help here for Power Query formulas. So let's click that. And we want to use date, right? Because we want to get the year. And you kind of can scroll through here. And this looks like this date.year is going to return the year from a date time value, which is exactly what we want. So let's go back to here. So we're going to type in date.year. And then we just need to specify the column that we want to do that on, and it's order date. And this is going to be a whole number. So let's hit OK. There we go. Again, so you can do a lot of sophisticated transformation here in your data flow.
Very nice.
So that's all we're going to do. So if we're happy with that, we're going to specify a destination of where we want this data to go. So let's go and hit the plus here. And we're going to put it in our lakehouse. Demo. And the webinar lakehouse. All right. So let me go back one. I missed something here. So if we're going to insert data to an existing table, we would choose that here. But since we're building a new table, we're just going to select new table. And then based off of our data, it's going to figure out the source and destination automatically. So it's just going to use the same column names, which is fine for this. We're going to hit save settings. And then if all looks good, we'll just hit publish. And you can see here, this gets sales order data. So it's publishing it first. That's what that spinning indicates.
Mm-hmm.
And once it's finished publishing, it will go ahead and run the data flow and bring that data in. So we'll just give that a moment. Any questions, Stephen, while we're waiting for this to process?
Well, the data flows look a little bit like Power Automate.
Sort of. It is just, this step is really just transformation of kind of a single set of data.
Okay.
It doesn't do anything. All it's going to do is you can pick where the data is coming from, and you can transform it as I did, and then publish it. So that's all it can do.
Okay.
So data flow on its own is kind of limited in what it can do. It's powerful, but the scope of what it can do is narrow. It's all about transforming and loading data.
Gotcha.
All right, so it published, and you can see here it's refreshing right now, and this should just take a moment to run. You can see that finished. If we go here, we can click on refresh history, and this will be helpful if you're trying to troubleshoot, and you can work your way down and see what it did. And here we can see that it got data from the web and loaded it into our lakehouse. Close that. And if we go back to our webinar lakehouse, and let's refresh our tables. So where's my data? Oh, let's go back to our endpoint. There we go. So that's a different view I was in. For simplicity here, we'll just show that here's our orders that we just loaded. Here's our data.
Got it. No, so now we have our data in this lakehouse in that table, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So that, as you notice, the only way to run that is on demand. Mm-hmm. So If we want to put this into a bigger process, we're going to use another component of Fabric, and that's a data pipeline. Let's go back to our workspace and we'll pick a new item. And we're going to look for, I can search for a pipeline, but I see it right here under Get Data. And we'll just call it pipeline.
Great. All these tools are just right here in the platform.
Yeah,
You don't have to install any software. It's just,
you don't have to go anywhere else. It's all right here. So pipeline is done. This is what we're going to use to both transform our data from data flows. We can move data. We can copy data. We can call other pipelines. This is the tool you're going to use to orchestrate your processes to get data into your lakehouse, transform it, and then move it or copy it to other lakehouses or to a data warehouse. So we're just going to pick data flow here as our activity. And let's just rename it order data. And then under the settings, we're in our workspace Fabric demo, and we're just going to pick the data flow, which I think was sales order data was the one I just chose. All right, so now we have the data flow in there. If we look here at our data flow, you can see once it's done, we can say what happens if it failed, if it's successful, if it skipped, which first step, so it's not going to get skipped. So we're going to use these steps to actually build additional logic into our pipeline. So what we want to do is we want to know, hey, was this successful or failed? And we want to notify the owner of this process or our IT team that we had a failure or success with our data flow. So what I'm going to do is we're going to use some activities here. We're going to create a variable. And so we're going to set a variable that's going to tell us whether this succeeded or failed. So we'll call the first one success. And we'll go to our settings, and this is the variable. So we're just going to create a new variable, and we'll just call it data flow status, and it'll be a string. Right. So this will be our success. So we want to set our variable to success. There we go. So we have that. So let's duplicate that, copy it, paste it, and then this one's going to be, hey, it wasn't successful, but it failed here. Failed. And then instead of setting our data flow status variable to success, we're going to set it to failed. All right. So we have both our variable settings here. And so if we come back to our data flow, hey, if everything ran well here, we want to set the success variable. And then, hey, it failed for some reason, and we connect that there. So we've done that. Last piece we want to do is we want to notify someone. So if we go back to our activities, you can see here there is an Outlook connector. We're just going to pick that. So if this finishes, we're going to go there. And this one finishes, we'll go there. And then go back to our Outlook. I'm just going to sign in and connect it with my account. Just taking a moment here to connect to Outlook. And then it's
so it's an authentication issue here.
Oh, there we go. Maybe I wasn't clicking. Well, there we go. So there's my account. Allow access. All right. So here under the settings, we're just going to say who it's going to go to, and we'll just send it to me.
You don't want to send me a copy?
Oh, sure. Make me type more. There we go. I think that's right. Yep, that's good.
Nice. Thank you.
All right. So order pipeline. ran, let's just say ran, and then in the body here, we can now use this variable that we had. So let's click status. And then over here on the right, we can see, hey, there's our variable data flow status. And then if we wanted, say we also just want to get, whoops. Maybe we want to get the unique ID identifier for this run.
Obviously, you can put some formatting and other information in that email body.
Sure, if there's a need for that. I like to keep things simple and to the point.
Great idea.
All right, so let's go home here. Let's go ahead and save our pipeline. And then we can validate it if there's any issues, but I think we're fine here. And then we can just run it. And so you're running it interactively, so we can kind of watch the progress in action here. So the first time you create one of these, to troubleshoot it, it's great to just be in here and watch it happen. It's going to take a moment or two to run. While that's processing, let's go ahead and click up schedule. So a data flow itself, you can't schedule, you can just run it kind of on demand. For pipeline, you can schedule and run these. So you can put this, if we're getting this data every day, multiple times a day, we'd go ahead and create a pipeline schedule. And if you have, multiple pipelines doing different things, you could have a parent pipeline and then have that call basically these child pipelines. So you can get very complex, very sophisticated, and really run your whole data ingestion and transformation through these pipelines.
Fantastic.
Let's refresh here, see if we're... So it's just taking a moment to run. There we go, finished. All right, so our process ran. It set the variable, finished successfully, and then it would send an email. And if we come over to the emails, just to show you kind of what it looks like, status successful, and then it would give the run ID.
Nice.
All right, so that's the data pipelines. Yeah, one thing I did want to note here, I did this to show you. So you can see this ran successfully, got the green check. It set the variable success, which was good, which is a check. The Outlook example I showed, that was from yesterday.
Okay.
We can see here, though, that the Outlook step never ran. And let's go ahead and discuss why that happened here. So let's go back to edit this. So if this was successful, but this step is expecting something from all the prior steps. And this ran, but this didn't run at all, so it never moved on because it didn't run successfully. So what you need to do, just to make sure you close the loop here, is you want to say, well, if this skipped, which means that it was successful, then you want to also have a path to take. Likewise, if it failed, so the success step is never going to run, you'd also want to say, hey, if it skips, I want to go here as well.
So you got to handle both cases.
Both cases, so that the Outlook step, both prior steps have either run or have skipped, and then this knows the trigger. So I won't rerun it again, but that's something you need to keep in mind if your process is running, but it's not going all the way through.
Makes sense. Got it.
Yep. All right. So the last piece I want to talk about today, let's go back to our workspace, is actually reporting on this data. So let's go to, I created a lake house called reporting. Let's go in there. Nice. So I'm in here. I'm going to create. So in this lakehouse reporting lakehouse, I have a set of tables here. We have city, customer, dates, employees, and our sales. So you're going to organize your data to support what's called a star schema, which is kind of the standard way to be reporting on data in a data warehouse for analytics, and that's what Power BI works best with. So we're going to create what's called the semantic model. Let's call it. Let's call it reporting. Let's call it sales. And let's pick our tables that we're going to use. Should be all of these.
So in that medallion architecture, is this the kind of data that would be at that gold layer that you're mentioning?
Correct. Yeah, because
Okay.
this is what our end users are going to use to report
Great.
on. So let's give them a minute to create the model. Let's kind of hide this a little bit so we have more room. And let's zoom out so we can see our tables. So here's our table. So fact table, that's the data that you want to aggregate and sum up. So for sales, we'd have our quantities, our amounts, that sort of thing. And then these dimensions are kind of how we want to slice and dice our data. So we have the city, the customer, dimension, the date, employee, and the item, the part number. So all we need to do is we want to build a relationship. So we look here, we have a city key in our fact table, and we just join it out to the city key here. And this is just establishing the relationship between these. Let's try that again.
Mm-hmm.
Between the two tables. So there we go. And likewise, customer. So we find the customer key. We're just going to drag and drop that to the customer key in that table. And let's say we're going to take the invoice date to this date. So we're just building the relationship with these tables. And then the employee, that's the salesperson, just join it to the employee key. And then lastly, here's our item number that we sold. So stock item key goes to stock item key here. There you go. So we built a relationship. It's called the star schema because we can kind of, if we put our fact table in the middle, kind of move these around. Right. Kind of looks like a star with our fact in the middle. So this is for any sort of analytical Power BI reporting, you always want to build a semantic model like this. You can do, if you just have one table, you certainly don't need to do this, but it's going to be best practice to always kind of build your data in this model. So once we have our sales model, so you can create a report. If you go into Power BI Desktop, you can connect right to this model, but I can also build a report right from here. So very, very, very similar look and feel to Power BI Desktop. And let's just do a quick, bar chart here. And let's see here. So our fact sales, we just say we want to see total amount as our value, so our y-axis. And then let's go up to our stock item. So basically we want to see our sales by item number. There we go. And then we can add a slicer so we can filter this data. So this is the slicing and dicing, right? So if I hit I pick slicer, and let's say we're interested in sales by state. So I can just drag and drop it. So I have our state province here, and then I can kind of click through here and see our sales by state. And then if we want to just add another component, let's just add a pie chart. And let's say we're interested in, so what we want to sum it on, we're interested in put quantity here for our values, and what we're interested in seeing is what our most popular color is. So if we go back to our stock items, this is where for each item, here's all the attributes that come with it. So we're just going to pick color and drag it on the legend, and then we can see what colors are most popular.
Nice.
And then we could just save this report, and then our end users can run it, and it can analyze this order data.
Really powerful, and we did all this within Fabric.
All within Fabric,
Yeah.
yep.
Great.
So kind of a quick overview of showing end-to-end data. We brought data in from, in this case, a CSV file, and we took it all the way through the process, added a semantic model, and reported on our data.
So obviously if you have a lot of corporate data, things in data, or, on-premise SQL or other sources, you can ingest that and then leverage all of that within, create different lake houses then within.
Right. Yeah, or even one lake house, and you're mixing and matching data from different sources, but bringing it all together so you can get to do the analytics that you need to do.
And then even some unstructured data?
Absolutely. You can just transform it, bring it into that bronze layer as unstructured data, and then take it through the
really powerful
transformation process.
All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan. That was a phenomenal demo. Very, very, very cool stuff.
Yeah, sure. Certainly my pleasure.
All right. So with that, we're going to look if we got some questions from the group here. So one question we have here, Jonathan, what is one lake versus a lake house? How do those two things relate? I think you've gone through this.
Yeah.
But
So
can you kind of recap that?
sure. Yeah. So one lake is that whole universe of data. That's that's where everything is stored. And a lake house is just one of those pieces that you can put into one lake. So one lake could have a whole series of lake houses. It can have data warehouses as well. So one lake is the whole overarching container, and then we have different components that we put into one lake.
Okay. Another question, similar to what I was asking before, but more about the pipeline. So is that pipeline like Power Automate, or is it more like an ETL tool? The pipeline.
A pipeline, yeah, it's sort of similar to Power Automate in that you have steps and you can have things that happen based off success or failure. But the pipeline is it's really meant to work in Fabric, and it's about orchestrating your data, moving and copying and transforming it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's more about orchestrating all your different processes and those data flows that you created, right? And be able to schedule them and notify about it.
Yeah, Power Automate is great, but it's not I would never use that as a data transformation tool.
Okay.
Power Automate's more about workflows and processes like that versus trying to take data from something and transforming it into something
Gotcha.
else. Yeah.
Well, looked really usable anyways. That's great. Okay, and then question. So we were showing Power BI there, but are Power BI licenses included with Fabric, or do you have to license that separately? So you created that one visualization. If someone wanted to connect to the data, do they need a license for that?
Yes. So at a certain Fabric capacity, at F64 or higher, viewers do not need additional licensing. It's built into that Fabric SKU. But anything lower, you would need your individual users to have a Power BI Pro license.
Okay, and a lot of organizations already have those data analysts and people that have those licenses. That probably wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. In either case, even at the higher SKU levels, if you're a report creator, then you'd still need a license to build a report. But your viewers would not when you're at those higher SKUs.
Excellent. Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that about wraps it up for us today. Thank you, Jonathan, for a fantastic demo. And hope you guys enjoyed. But basically, we've seen the power of Fabric, and hope everyone has a great day, rest of their day.
Bye, everyone.